ninth greatest shooting guard of all time is Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller is now known as an analyst for NBA TV and a color commentator for TNT. But during his playing career, Reggie Miller was one of the game's greatest shooters. He was especially noted for his long-range shooting. From the 1997-98 season until the 2010-2011 season, when he was surpassed by Ray Allen, Miller was the NBA's all-time leader in three-point field goals made. He was not only known for his prodigious shooting, he was a deadly accurate shooter, connecting on 39.5% of his long-range attempts. Miller usually scored later in the game, with fourth quarter often being known as Miller time. He was also known to score timely buckets and to hit key game situation shots and free throws as well. Speaking of free throws, he is one of the game's best in history. He is currently the ninth most consistent free throw shooter in professional basketball history. Reggie Miller grew up in Riverside, California during the 1970s and 1980s. His sister Cheryl is one of the greatest women basketball players of all time. She routinely beat him in games of one-on-one until Reggie entered his 20s. Although Reggie is one of the best shooters of his era, he was not noted for having the most fundamentally sound release. Miller has stated that he developed his high-arcing release due to his sister constantly blocking his shot when he was younger. Miller attended college at UCLA. In his second season, his Bruins won an NIT championship. In his final collegiate season, the three-point line was instituted. Miller hit 69 three-pointers that year. His team also won the Pacific 10 regular season championship and the first Pacific 10 Conference men's basketball tournament championship. In 1987, Miller was selected by the Indiana Pacers with the 11th pick of the NBA draft. As hard as this is believed now, Miller was not wanted by the vast majority of Pacers fans. They wanted the team to pick up Indiana native and Hoosier legend Steve Alford. Alford went on to score 744 points in the NBA. Reggie Miller, 25,279. I think the Pacers made the right choice, don't you? Initially, Miller was second in scoring behind Chuck Person for the Pacers. After Person was traded during the 1992 offseason, Reggie Miller became the unquestioned leader of that team. During the 1992-93 season, Reggie Miller attained his individual high-scoring game of 57 points against the Charlotte Hornets. Reggie Miller was also one of the game's most prolific trash talkers. He got into a notable altercation with the only guy to score more points in an individual game than Miller that year, Michael Jordan. And I also have to say this, that this is to all the people in the comment sections who talk about how King Jordan didn't get punished for fighting Reggie Miller. Number one, he did. He got suspended the very next game against the New York Knicks. So, shut the fuck up in the comment section about, all the rules. Jordan can do anything. He can put his hands on a player. Jordan do all this. Jordan, guys resent this man so fucking much. It's ridiculous. But anyway, with Michael Jordan's retirement in 1973, Reggie Miller soon began to be seen as the best guard in the NBA, or at least the best guard in the Eastern Conference. And he began to rack up memorable moments, particularly against the New York Knicks, including his 25-point fourth-quarter outburst in, I believe, was Game 5 of the 1994 Eastern Conference semifinals. Yeah, Reggie. Then he had this moment. 8 points in 8.9 seconds. 2 of the points not seen are 2 free throws he made toward the end of the game. He just completely took over that game. And once again just became the Knick killer. Now, Reggie Miller never was a guy that blew you away statistically. He didn't put up the most gaudy numbers that we've ever seen, but he was amazingly consistent. Usually putting up somewhere between 18 to 22 points a game, holding down about 4 rebounds a game, and dishing out between 2 and 3 assists per game. He was a very accurate scorer, shot about 47% for his career from the field overall. As I mentioned, 39.5% from the three-point line and nearly 89% from the foul line. He was not the biggest guy in the world. When he was drafted, he was about 6'7", 175. He eventually filled out somewhat to 195. Where the hell this 20 pounds went to, I cannot really ascertain from looking at the man. But he was just a skinny guy. But he was not noted for his game was not predicated on physicality anyway, so that didn't really matter. For his career, he was a 5-time NBA All-Star, 3 times on All-NBA third team. In 2004, he won the J. Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award. His number 31 was retired in 2006 by the Indiana Pacers. His number 31 has also been retired by the UCLA Bruins. He scored, as I mentioned earlier, 25,279 points, which is tied all-time Rick Barry in professional basketball history. He's in the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame as a player, a recent inductee. In 1996 in Atlanta, he won gold in the Olympics. Before I go, I also almost forgot to mention, in his prime, this guy was like constant motion out there. It was so difficult to guard Reggie Miller. It was so exhausting because of this guy. One of the things that Reggie Miller could not do very well is create his own shots. So a lot of times he had to be set up by his team to get scoring into scoring position. So it was constantly running around screens, constant motion. After a while, unless you were a very well-conditioned athlete, and even then, it could get very tiresome, particularly if you're an older athlete, to play against this guy. And I think that's one of the things that wore down Michael Jordan, the 35-year-old Michael Jordan, in that series against the Pacers in 1998. Because he started off the series shooting very well, looking fresh, relatively fresh, but toward the end of that series, he was very exhausted. And that comes from, him being an older guy at that time, old basketball years, going against a guy who was still pretty close to his peak and just was a player who just, like Richard Hamilton, just constantly motion out there. But anyway, my 9th greatest shooting guard of all time, constant motion, the most prodigious trash talker of his era, Reggie Miller.